On everybody. Welcome to episode 0 of the In the Basement podcast. I am your lovely host, PsychoTex Games. Now, if you're kind of unfamiliar with who I am as a streamer, yeah, you would be. But anyways, so I hear you asking, well, I'm not familiar with you, but I want to be. And that's good that you say you want to be familiar with me. Um the most details I'll diverge at this time are that um my name is Steven. I live in a pathetic state called Arkansas, and that's about the best you're getting from me. I had a decent upbringing, I would like to think, and my life is currently going pretty good as it is. My birthday is going to be coming up here at the time of recording. And as many of my viewers will already know, I am a massive nerd. I love random trivia. I love all things science, all things absolutely nerdy. If it's something to learn, I want to learn it. I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. Some of my favorite video games are vintage PC games, the original Fallout series. I was a really big fan of some of the Command and Conquer games, specifically the strategy game Red Alert 2 and the Yuri's Revenge expansion pack. I really enjoyed like city builders. So things like SimCity when it first came out. I currently enjoy, city skylines. I'm a big fan of. And you'll have to forgive me. This is my first time kind of casting on my own, but nevertheless, let's get a little into why I even started streaming in the first place. Because many of my viewers will already know why I started streaming, but many of the new listeners will want to know a little further about why I started doing what I do, why I'm even doing this, things like that. I mainly started streaming because at the time the COVID pandemic had just started, and I'm gonna have to censor COVID, but it's fine. I had just gotten Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey, and I saw that there was nobody really streaming it on Twitch. So I was like, okay, well, I want to bring attention back to this game that I think is really cool. I wanted to try streaming anyways, but I've got a couple of my mutual streamer friends, and I will shout them out so you can go check them out. But mainly, it was talking to the homies Nova, going by at Yazgup on Twitch, the homie Nick, aka Dimadaddy, and the homie Holly, better known on Twitch as Holly Saves Bees. Lovely people, absolutely lovely people. They gave me kind of the motivation that I needed to start streaming, and they will be guests on this podcast whenever I can manage to set that up with them. But I mainly started streaming because I felt there wasn't enough genuinely kind streamers on Twitch. Everyone that I had seen was either genuinely kind, or the majority of the streams I watched, I saw that people were mainly in it for the money. They weren't really interacting with their chat. Their community was kind of going absolutely insane in chat. And I wanted a community where everyone could be, an all-inclusive community. Whether you're gay, straight, non-binary, no matter how you identify, no matter your race, you show up to the stream, you leave your bullshit at the door, and for a couple of hours, the entirety of it's purely myself and chat. That's all I wanted my channel to be. That's what I'm glad my channel has become. And it really puts a lot of things in perspective because I was just some guy who streamed video games and thought he was funny. And I never really expected anything to come out of it other than to have maybe one or two viewers, never peak past 50. And I was perfectly fine with that. I still am perfectly fine if something happens to a good chunk of my viewership and things tank. I'm perfectly okay with it. I don't stream because I need money or I want the recognition. I stream because I'm trying to make people happy. If you have a bad day, if you have your boss is riding your ass a little at work, or school absolutely sucked, your girlfriend broke up with you, your boyfriend broke up with you, the person you've been dating, for the longest time ended up cheating on you. It doesn't matter. You can come into the stream, you can have a good time, and you can have fun. Everybody's nice, everybody's inclusive, and that's all I wanted. I want people to show up to my streams and leave happier than when they left, even if it's not, by much. And getting into a little more about, what my goals were going into streaming. I didn't really set any goals. Come to think about it, I'd never really. My main thing was, okay, let's get to where we can stream on PC, and hopefully we get a sponsorship. That's still one of the goals, is to try to look into getting a sponsorship, which is why I'm gonna start trying to put my name out there more, so on and so forth. But at the same time, I just started streaming with the mindset of, let's just have fun, let's just entertain. So I didn't really have any plans, at the start of streaming. But what my plans are going forward are that I really want to, I want to keep growing the community. I want to keep expanding this wholesome air that we have around us. I really, what am I trying to say here? I really want to, yeah, I mainly really want to keep growing the community. I want to start interacting with everyone a lot more off stream. I want to make my name, I want to make the PsychoTex games name something that everybody knows. That, I'm the talk of the town, I'm the next big thing. And I feel like we're slowly on the path to getting that all sorted and getting it taken care of. Also, at some point, having a merch drop would be absolutely fantastic. Having any sort of branded Psychotex Games merch would be absolutely incredible. And I have to unfortunately delay the cover album I wanted to do, which it sucks, but it is what it is. And of course, what's every single good streamer without having any sort of interest, both on and uh, off camera? Like I said in the beginning of the podcast, my some of my interests, I really love science. I love scientific facts. I love any sort of new scientific information that gets put out. I didn't formally go to college, but I still consider myself a ever expanding student of science. I'm always reading, whatever latest scientific news comes out and, seeing what a lot of data and information says. Um, my big subject these days is particularly meteorology. And for those unfamiliar with meteorology, that's the study of weather and weather patterns. I've always had a fascination with meteorology ever since I was a kid. I always used to want to go outside while it was storming, see what the storm looked like, what the tornado was, what the impending tornado was going to look like. And have I had a couple of close calls in my life with seeing the formation of some severe weather? Oh, absolutely. But when you live in the American South, it gets to be a pretty common sight. 1 minute it's thunderstorming, the next minute, everything stops for a second, and suddenly the tornado sirens are going off, and it eventually gets to be a pretty common sight, which can be said about different weather occurrences for a lot of different areas. Of course, as I also mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I have a massive love of video games. I've been gaming ever since I could point and click a mouse. I remember the very first video game I played was the original Fallout, and I'm not gonna spoil anything like that for you. I'm not gonna spoil the game anything or anything like that for you. Just know that it will be coming to the channel very soon, and it's a game that I absolutely adore. It's something I love and will always love. I remember one of my very first memories is I'm sitting in my dad's lap as I'm playing this because my dad had just completed the game for the very first time, and I had saw the ending dialogue and everything where again, not gonna spoil. I had saw the ending dialogue, and as the ending plays, I'm just bawling my eyes out. I think personally that's what started my love of video games. Then, of course, the first game I actually played by myself, I believe, was a little known game, and I've tried to find copies of it before, but I haven't. For some reason, all copies of this game absolutely vanished off the face of the earth. Was a video game called Streets of Sim City. It was in the style of like a two and a half two and a half dimension racer. There were different missions you could do. There were different objectives you could complete, different cars you could unlock, things like that. It was a really wonderful game at the time. The soundtrack for it was absolutely incredible, and it upsets me to this very day that I'll never be able to capture that piece of my childhood again. Of course, getting back on the subject of video games I happen to enjoy, I love real-time strategy games. I love but really strategy games in general, like Civilization Sid Meier's Civilization 5 being the first game I bought as a legal 18-year-old adult. Kind of kind of upset that I spent like 80 plus dollars looking back on it, but it is what it is. I really love the Command and Conquer series, and I'm so glad that some of the series is starting to get rebooted because in its modern state, Red Alert 2 and Yuri's Revenge are currently unplayable, and it honestly upsets me just a little bit. Just a little bit. I've been hearing rumors for a while, but I'm not like speculating anything. That's not this kind of podcast. If I wanted to do a speculation podcast, I'd report on what Dream is doing or any current controversy that's on Twitter right now. I'd do some reporting on that, but we're not that kind of podcast, ladies, gentlemen, gays and nays. We're not that kind of podcast. Of course, I am a massive lover of animals. I've always shown a natural inclination to want to be in nature. I remember playing in the woods a lot as a kid, even though I wasn't supposed to. I've I guess I've always felt sort of a natural detachment from being the definition of normal. You know, I never really complied. I was always a little weird, as some people would call me. But I always felt like I was a good guy, and when you're your true self 24/7, you know who your friends really are. So I was never really. I might have been absolutely embarrassed at some of the things I did in school, but I don't regret all the memories I've made. I don't regret the friends I know. Do I talk to any of them really anymore? Not really. Everyone's pretty much gone on, grown up, and is living their life, and that's good for them. And then, of course, you still have those friends that never grow up. You know, they never change their way of thinking, their mode of living, and it sucks. But what can you do? You never really, you never really grow out of it. You know, if people don't want to grow out, if people don't want to grow up, they don't want to move on with their lives. They don't want to live and learn from their mistakes. There's nothing you can do. You can't help those who do. You cannot offer a helping hand to those who do not wish to be helped. I'm quoting somebody, but I can't. I'm paraphrasing the fuck out of that, and it so does not bother me at this moment. As I mentioned, streaming is more of a recent kind of development within my life. I looked into it for a good chunk of 2019 because my relationship had come to an end at the time, and I started watching a lot of YouTubers and a lot of streamers. I remember seeing how funny Raccoon Eggs is, and that type of humor is never exactly replicated. It's imitated. People can try to be as funny as someone like that, but I just remember seeing a lot of his videos and I was like, wow, some of this humor is kind of dark, but it's my kind of dark humor. I kind of think it's funny. Of course, I'm naturally, I'm musically inclined, so I love I love the do. The do is a hell of a YouTuber slash streamer now. I remember I really started getting big into Vanoss gaming whenever my ex and I would watch, his YouTube videos. I'm not really a fan of I'm not really a fan of I would say PewDiePie or Dream. I just I never caught on to the PewDiePie hype, and Dream is a whole other can of worms that I may or may not want to open. But the TLDR is I really don't want to associate with Dream's community, like at all. And if you've been on Twitter, if you've seen any sort of Reddit post or anything like that, no. There's no good reason anything like that should happen. but being touching on the subject of my love of music, I've always said I'll listen to anything, and I've kept good to that. I try to think I have a very diverse music taste. My in particular favorite genre slash time period of music is sort of big band slash jazz music from the 1930s, 1940s. But I also love, modern music. I love rock. I love rock. I really love metal. I was big into EDM music, electronic dance music. I'm not really the biggest fan of modern country. I'll listen to it, but it's just noise. I'm also not really a big fan of pop music. Again, I'll listen to it, but it's noise. That's all it is. I don't consider modern pop to be music. I think the right time period for pop music was the 80s, but it also wasn't. I also think pop music as a genre is just kind of cookie cutter. It's kind of the same beat, kind of the same, it's literally like they take the same formula for a song, press it into a mold, and then what they pull out with the mold is, is a hit single. And while that may be the case, it's just not entertaining. There's no soul to music like that. There's no I mean, people could say the same thing about EDM, but you know, I just happen to feel that way about pop music. I feel like EDM at least has a little bit of the artist's actual intention in the music. It has, it can relay emotions. Not all of it is just thumping and bumping club music. Some of it actually tries to relay a story, relay a message. Not all of it. No, some of it. And I feel like I feel like that's the issue with pop music and modern country music. And when I say modern country music, I mean anything from, say, 2010 to the current year, with a lot of what people like to call like stadium country, where it's the same formula about a dog, either someone losing their dog, some involving someone's dog, someone's truck, a divorce, a relationship, something like that. It almost always never fails to find at least one of those few topics in modern country music, and that's a depressing statement right there. That it never fails that you can find one of 4 or 5 topics in modern country music. Now, am I a big fan of the classic country music? Oh, absolutely. You know, just to name a couple because I don't remember a whole lot of names off the top of my head. Dolly Parton, Conway Twitty, Johnny Cash. A lot of There's so much more that, like I said, I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not going to, pull up a lot of country music names in the sidebar to see exactly who I know. But hopefully, you listeners out there are understanding my point that a lot of modern music is sad or not necessarily sad, but it's repetitive. It's upsetting. Even rap music, which used to be about good feels and good vibes and good times and stuff like that. It sounds like a lot of people they've done a lot of drugs before they show up to the mic. Whereas it used to take talent. It used to take creative genius. Now you've got people who don't even produce their own beats. They have beats produced for them. None of the raps they write are original. Everyone always raps about either drugs, money, women, or and I'll admit I'm guilty of enjoying some of modern music. Am I absolutely gonna deny that I haven't listened to and enjoyed some of it? Absolutely not. I don't know what kind of person you think. I don't know what kind of person I'm making it seem like I am, but I would hope that I'm not, coming off as someone who's very hypercritical. But the thing about it is, but the point I'm trying to drive home is that a lot of modern music in my ears has absolutely no soul to it. It's very cookie cutter. It's very cut and dry. It's just noise. It's background noise that people tend to play, just to listen to something or so that they don't have to talk to someone on an awkward car ride, or the beat happens to be catchy and they want to dance to it while they're out in the club. And it's upsetting. It really is. I know one artist in particular um who I would consider guilty of sounding like they're on a lot of drugs before they step up to the microphone and start, rapping or whatever. Um I'll be honest, uh one of the artists I can think of off the top of my head is Kodak Black. Love some of the guy's music, but again, there's that sound of, you know, there's that sound of no, I'm not it's not him. No, it's not him. I'm trying to think of an artist who would be a good example of that, and my thinking isn't exactly top notch at the moment. But my point stands that a lot of yeah, I'm reiterating my point a third time before we switch topics here. A lot of modern music is just upsetting to listen to. If you if you grow up knowing nothing but music that has soul in it, that relays emotion, conveys a message, it's upsetting because you think they could be doing they could be there's so much talent that could be, put into different projects. And again, I'm not going out there and slandering your favorite artist. If you have a favorite artist, that's perfectly fine. But it takes no talent to write pop music. It's something that people outsource. It's something that I feel like music companies kind of outsource. And that's a whole other discussion for a later day. That's a discussion for a whole other day. Recently, though, I've been getting into. Recently, though, I've been exploring some newer genres of video games, particularly some of the games in the RPG franchise or in the what people call Souls games. I've absolutely loved any form of Souls game I played. It's just I'm not good at video games. As long time viewers on my Twitch channel will know, I'm not exactly the best at video games, but I have fun. I really love survival games, and I guess I'm a little picky about what I consider to be a good game or what I consider to be a bad game. Admittedly, my tastes are kind of specific. I really loved my experience playing Dark Souls 3. I love my experience playing Bloodborne. Currently playing my current playthrough of Remnant from the Ashes is a fun experience in and of itself. And honestly, I would like to try to find more Souls, Dark Souls type games to enjoy because I feel like I could really develop a genuine love of video games like that. And back to RPGs, I absolutely love any RPG game I've picked up. I love the Elder Scrolls series. I didn't play much of it up until I played Skyrim, and then my love for it kind of took off from there. As I aforementioned, I grew up playing the Fallout series, and the Fallout series was heavily based in RPG aspects. I've recently gotten into Dungeons and Dragons as a tabletop RPG. I used to really love trading cards. I would play the Pokemon trading card with my parents like it was because it was a thing to do on Friday nights. We would all take a trip down to our local hobby shop, and my parents would meet up with some of their friends who also played because it was a thing among their friend group for the jobs they were working at the time. And we all just played. I learned to play the original Pokemon trading card game. I developed a love of Pokemon almost instantly. And when I became older and I was exposed to Magic the Gathering, I took to that really quick. Magic the Gathering, in my eyes, is one of those fun trading card games. It just so happens. It's not to say that I don't think games like that don't have their faults. A lot of things that I would really like to get into are just simply too expensive. Like getting into Warhammer 40K, you better be prepared to have a lot of money if you get into Warhammer 40K because some of that stuff is expensive. Sheesh. I think I've seen figure sets go for as much as $500, $600 for just a basic little 5-figure starter pack. And that's including the cost of getting the figurines, painted and whatnot. I've seen people who've had I've seen images online of people who have thousands of figures and spent tens of thousands of dollars on Warhammer 40K stuff, and they don't regret it. I could never do that. I personally could not sit there and, you know, you love what you love, but to spend thousands of dollars on something like that, I can't see why. I also, in my more recent adult years, I've developed a love for MOBAs. Video games like Smite, League of Legends. I've even started experimenting in my off time with playing Dota because I remember Dota being one of the few talked about games in my friend circle. I didn't really get into it until out of school, obviously, but free to play MOBAs like that are, in my mind, pretty awesome. But I think that goes to show that someone who had originally started with a love for RPGs and strategy games just kind of developed his own taste and ended up developing, just a love overall for video games. But as I mentioned, every set of video games has its drawbacks. Whether or enjoying something also has its drawbacks. Like people are going to say, well, Dungeons and Dragons is super nerdy and borderline satanic. And if you look at some of the imagery offhand, you could see why. But the thing about it is, a lot of that hysteria started, to my knowledge, around the 80s, 90s, when it was a common misconception that's what was going on at these games. Was these people who would play Dungeons and Dragons in like wizard capes or cardboard armor or something like that, overly concerned parents would see this as kind of ritualistic, and I can't say I blame them, but there was definitely an air of misunderstanding and intolerance to want to learn something like that. No one was as properly informed as they are nowadays. Some people complain that some communities are absolutely, a lot of people complain nowadays that a lot of communities are absolutely toxic and they gatekeep. One one community in particular that I find tends to be just absolutely negative, and I've joked about this on my streams before, is League of Legends. League of Legends is an absolutely toxic community where I personally have seen my team win, and players on the winning team still get, to use gamer terminology, still get roasted, still get, flamed for doing good, and it's like, what kind of ass backwards situation is that? You're winning, but you're still being a toxic, you know, negative toxic person to your own teammate who you've played an entire match with, and you can't just learn to like either keep it silent or move along. You have to absolutely show, you actually have to show no kindness, no compassion for that person. Like, that's awful. And I guess in recent years, the Call of Duty community has been kind of guilty of similar to the same of some of the same habits. It hasn't been as bad in my mind lately, but I remember at a few years ago, You couldn't take two steps without someone talking about, oh yeah, well, what's your favorite Call of Duty game? Oh, it's this. Why is your favorite Call of Duty game this? Why is it not this? Like, what are you, fucking stupid? It's like I'm overhearing this, and it's blowing my mind that people are talking to each other like this, especially over a video game. It makes no sense whatsoever. The fact that someone would want to, exclude other people from learning and enjoying the game is it again, it blows my mind. It's why a lot of people tend to be discouraged or driven away from learning anything about any sort of fandom is usually it's kind of toxic. It's why I have a lot of issues with K-pop fans. Now I know I'm going to preface this by saying I have no personal issues with K-pop, Korean popular music. I have no issues with it. Some of it honestly is really good. I'm merely talking about a small percentage of the community that I'm merely talking about a small percentage of the community on websites like Twitter and Reddit where these people are toxic. So I want to preface this now. I have seen discussions on said forums like Twitter and Reddit again where there could be a subject no one is talking about. No one is even remotely talking about anything to do with any certain artist or something like that. And then you you just start seeing like Korean pop star fan cams in the replies, and it's like, and for anyone who doesn't know what a fan cam is an edit of a celebrity or anything like that or a celebrity or a personality that somebody makes as kind of a tribute to the person. I've never seen anybody making fan cams like that as healthy behavior, personally. But I understand there are some people with some well-meaning intentions behind it, and again, I'm not exactly condoning that kind of thing. It just so happens that a lot of things revolving around that are negative. But getting back to what I was talking about, K-pop stands or K-pop fans, not K-pop stan. Well, no, I do want to use the term. I do want to use the term stan because some people in this community will absolutely just go to a internet war over you insulted they feel like you insulted their pop star or their favorite idol. They base their whole life around what this person is doing right now, what their next album is coming up, when they're next touring, etc., etc. And in my mind, that's obsessive behavior. That's not okay. And I'm genuinely worried for some of these self-proclaimed stands. The term stan, and breaking all this down, the term stan comes from an Eminem song that was done. Let me get the exact information. I want to come absolutely correct about this. Okay, this so the song "Stan" was released by Eminem in the year 2000. And Stan was written about a mentally ill fan who, Eminem hadn't had the chance to respond to at the time. Just to give a very brief synopsis of this term. And this fan kept sending letters that he was, he was busy. He was making music, doing promos and everything. He hadn't had time to answer the letters. But the man became such kind of an obsessed person that he ended up taking his own life and his girlfriend's life. That in my mind is the connotation of what a stan is. And for people to openly call themselves, some of them are proud to admit that they're a stan. I don't know what to say. Like in my mind, you're not you just admitted that you're obsessed and you might need a little help. Now, am I going to go on a limb and say all stans are negative? No, but the connotation of calling yourself a stan is absolutely negative. You could be one of the coolest people in the world, have absolutely the best well-meaning intentions, but in my mind, the moment you identify yourself as a stan, knowing all of that, you've pretty much said, okay, I'm a varying degree of obsessed with a person. And that's entirely not okay. Obsession is never a good thing. It's why I've never been able to understand a lot of the drama coming out of a lot of the communities, because these people, usually kids or teenagers or something like that, who won't inform themselves enough to make an honest opinion and everything like that. They won't they're not willing to learn. They're set that what they've got in the information they have in front of them is exactly what they should see. And it's upsetting, frankly. It's the fact that some people can actively go out and base their entire lives off of what one person is doing at any hour of any given day is a strange concept to me. That's why I always told myself whenever I first started streaming, I don't want stands, I want homies, I want fans. I don't even want fans, honestly. I don't. The second that I feel like people are becoming absolutely obsessed with what I'm doing every minute of every day, that's not a sign of success. That's a sign of concern. I feel like people need to be a little more proactive in handling their communities. Now, I understand, some of these big names that have have managers handling their media accounts and stuff like that. I completely understand not everybody has the opportunity to, you know, not everybody has a chance to address everything properly. But if it's one person, say like a streamer or a YouTuber or something, that doesn't really have their own, media manager, that is able to immediately interact with their community. And for that community to still actively go out and attack people just because they don't enjoy something that the streamer does, that the personality does, or the fact that they don't enjoy or the fact that they don't even like some of the things that have been done in the past, whether or not they were the best of intentions or not. The fact that people are willing to borderline fight tooth and claw and do malicious things for someone that probably doesn't even know who they are personally. It 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 hurts. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. It hurts my mind to think about. And I have nothing to say about it other than I'm disappointed. A lot of these young people, I feel like, could be doing better things with their time. They could be, they could be learning things. They could be actively doing anything else other than they could be making friends. They could be doing something else. And instead, they're letting an internet personality determine what's, they're letting an internet personality determine what's going on in their life. You know, what thing are they doing today that I'm going to revolve my life around? But maybe just that's just the whole thing being absolutely ridiculous to me. And I apologize if there are lapses or pauses in if there are lapses or pauses in the stream. I'm thinking like a million miles a minute. Have I'm also not used to sitting still for as long as I am, and I tend if I sit still for too long, I feel like I tend to get a little bit jittery. But speaking like this in this kind of platform is a little new to me, and hopefully all you wonderful listeners out there will realize that I'm giving it my best, and that's the point of making content is it's going to improve. Eventually, I'll be talking to this stream. I'll be talking to this camera. Like there's nothing. I'll be talking to this microphone. Like there's nothing in particular going on. Like I'm talking to a person. And by the way, if you've stuck around this long, I thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I really do. I thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. I know you had a lot of options for finding any way to fill maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time, but I appreciate you, all you listeners out there. But to talk a little more about who I am, I've had some. Obviously, everyone has had some, stories of them being kind of a deviant when they were younger. I remember I would get in trouble with the teacher at school for in different and some different stages of my education, and it's looking back on it, I was like, why did I say that? Go against why did I go against a teacher like that? I guess I was going through changes. I was going through a little bit of a rebellious attitude. But I remember in particular, I was in I was in a math class. I must have been about 13, 14 years old, and I had decided that me and some of my classmates were disrupted. I was usually the quiet kid, but I had decided that I was going to, be a little disruptive. I was going to get, detention. So random points during the class, we make noise. And the third time or so of making the noise, the teacher was able to figure out it was me and two other students. And so we all got 2 or 3 days of detention. It was absolutely bananas. But looking back on things like that, I can look back at those as fond memories because that was me being a kid. I might not have understood at the time what I was doing was intentionally disruptive or anything wrong, but it's one of those experiences that now in my older years I look back and I chuckle a little bit. But allow me to regale you listeners out there with the story of working my first job at a McDonald's. Because yes, I was a former employee of a McDonald of one of my local McDonald's. All in all, it was a pretty entertaining. It was a pretty good first job. If I had a chance to do a few things different, I would totally go back in time and I would change some of my work. I would change my work ethic. I'd be a little more I'd be a little more assertive. But working for this McDonald's actually closed. For listeners unfamiliar somehow with the concept of a McDonald's, there are two kinds of locations. There are McDonald's that close at certain times, and there are McDonald's that are open 24 hours a day. I happen to work at one of the in my particular in my town. There were a few McDonald's locations, one of which closed at a certain time. I think the other two of them stayed open late into the night, and I think actually one of them was a 24-hour one. But nevertheless, I worked at a McDonald's that had a closing time. Obviously, obviously according to the working laws, I because I was 18, I was pretty much eligible to be hired in as a store closer. And I was like, okay, that's cool. You know, I'm 18. I'm willing to make some money. You know, I'm willing to learn whatever it takes. And I'm going through the motions of the job and I'm learning everything. And as I go, all of it's coming to me a lot easier. I had some wonderful experiences. I trained under some really good people. But I guess I do owe credit to my friend's mom for helping me get the job in the first place because she kind of vouched for me. But I remember one incident in particular where I was manning the front register. It was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night, so everything was starting to get cleaned. We were getting prepped for shutting everything down because getting prepped for shutdown was about a 2 or so hour process. You have, say, three people in the store. One person is getting ready, getting one area ready to close down. Another person is getting another area ready to close down, and the manager is doing managerial processes. But I remember this one person in particular. She came in and she had put in a very specific order. She wanted her food prepped a certain way. So I take her order and I hand it to I punch it into the machine, and deal out her change, stuff like that. And I hand her food. Well, about 10 minutes later, as I'm in the back of the as I'm in the back of the restaurant you know, handling processes, after I come back from, I want to say it was taking out the garbage, I was told that the person had come back, or that the woman had come back, and she had gotten, according to him, he saw nothing. He said he saw nothing wrong with the way the order was taken. Pulled up the receipt and everything, and for some reason, she tried to make it seem like there were things wrong with the burger that obviously weren't. In hindsight, she may have been trying to scam us. And if that's the case, how much of a scumbag do you have to be to scam a freaking McDonald's? But as I'm walking into the back of the restaurant, as I'm walking back into the location, I hear, I will never do business with you guys again if you don't refund my order, etc., etc. And then I get pulled off to the side, and I said, and my manager at the time tells me, "Hey, did you take her order?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did. I appreciate you manning the front counter because I would not have had." At this point, I'm almost 19. I'm a ball of anxiety. I started smoking working at this job because this fast food industry is absolutely stressful. Don't let If you're listening and you're considering having your first job be in the fast food or retail industry, be sure you have the be sure you have the fortitude to handle it. Be sure you have decent public speaking skills because you are so going to need it. If it's one thing you can say you learned from this podcast, it's have the fortitude to be able to handle customer service if that's your desired occupation. I could I was like, "Well, did you hand I had asked him, well, did you get it handled and everything?" He's like, "Yeah," and he said, could you pull up the receipt for me?" And that obviously I did. I showed him exactly. I put in exactly what she ordered. And he said, "Okay, that's good to know. I was okay with refunding her this time, but if she comes back, keep a very close eye on her. People are notorious for some people tend to want to try to scam us into giving them free food or whatever, and threatening us with bad reviews or never doing business with us again. And of course, we're obligated to, hand out a refund, at least at our location. I can't speak for any and all McDonald's locations. Entirely not sponsored, by the way. Entirely not sponsored. But I just remember that being one of the key points of, man, customer service is kind of bullshit. But as I said, there were highs, there were lows. One of the things I hated about working at the McDonald's in my area was there were a lot of folks that drove big trucks with loud engines, and anytime they would rev their engines, I would be working drive through, and the intercom is super sensitive. So anytime I'm taking an order, all I hear is just absolutely loud, just vroom, vroom. And I just, like, why? Why do you rev your engine? Why are you hanging out in the parking lot of a McDonald's? What do you have to gain from hanging out at a McDonald's parking lot? I have never understood. People will find the strangest places to congregate and hang out, and it makes absolutely no sense. It's never made any semblance of sense to me that people will find just the most out there places to congregate. Then, of course, going from being 18 to I'm currently almost 24. I've worked a gamut of jobs. I've worked a lot of jobs. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've worked quite a few jobs. I've worn many hats. I remember being an on the phone representative for a health insurance company. I worked at a I worked in retail a couple of times. Namely working as I mentioned at a McDonald's at age 18, and then I worked for a pretty big international supermarket chain, and that was a really fun experience. I've worked as a janitor, and that was a pretty good stint for a while. I've worked in several factories. I've worn a hat. I've worn multiple hats throughout my thing, or throughout my work career. Has it resulted in the best looking work experience? No, it certainly hasn't. But at the same time, I kind of, I tried at the time I was switching between these jobs. I was trying to find, I was trying to survive. I was trying to figure out where my interests are to make more money. Because if I'm sitting in a job where I'm making $10, $11 an hour, and there's an opportunity that I know I can get where I can make more money, I'm gonna chase the bag. I'm going to go to this job that the work might be a little more strenuous, a little more difficult, but it pays better. There's, better benefits. I guess call that human instinct to, want more money, want to be able to live more comfortably, so you're willing to put in more effort. But in a nutshell, kind of my that's a little bit of my background. That's now we're getting into the session of the podcast where, I'm still not showing chat on screen, but if there are any questions that anyone in chat would like to have answered, you go ahead and you pipe up in chat. You let me know that you ask me a question, and I will read it off and I will answer it for you. And we'll have a little bit of an open Q&A for the next, 10 or 20 minutes, but if there's something you feel like you missed and you want me to, am I going to be streaming later? I'll end up cutting this out of the I'll end up cutting this out of the recording edit, but I'll probably end up streaming a game here after this. This was just something I needed to. This was just something I wanted to get out of the way now. I don't know. I feel like there might be a little more dead air, and if that's the case, I'm gonna have to really carefully edit. this podcast. All right. Other than that, though, any further questions from what I'm delightfully going to call the peanut gallery? The homies on the other side of the this internet television that we're currently going about. Where the name Basement Boys came from? Okay, I don't feel like I'm the best to talk about this, but I'll tell the story as best as I understand it. Um, the name Basement Boys was not actually a name of my conception. I was merely brought into the group because of an affiliation with, being a member or being in a streamer's community, saving the bees. Now, bear in mind, I had been enjoying Saving the Bees' content for years at this point. I remember because I remember following him, following his content uh, when he was still Barack Obama on Facebook. God, that brings up a lot of memories. But the name Basement Boys comes from those of us that are, mutually fans of. It's a running joke among members of Saving the Bees' community that, we're in the basement. We it's a bit of a running joke that we're in the basement, making merchandise and stuff like that. It's a running joke among the community. So you know what? We're and I guess part of it comes from the expression "hanging out with the boys." So if we're all hanging out together, we're all boys. We're the boys in the basement. We're the basement boys. As I want to say where that comes from now. Any one of the homies who watches this, feel free to kind of correct me on where the name comes from. But I want to say that's facts as best as I can understand it. I want to say that's facts best as I can understand it, or unless I overanalyzed and I'm just a complete moron, which is entirely possible. Is entirely possible. But that's going to do it for this episode of In the Basement. I think we have enough to. I think I've had a killer time talking to you guys, and hopefully. Okay, I'll answer one last question then. I'll answer one last question. How did you rocket your Twitch career? Really, really, and my advice for anyone wanting to, start their own streaming or anything, I wouldn't exactly what I call it. What I call have what I call a Twitch career. I just have, you know, I just have a bit of. I just stream for a little bit, and I've been streaming consecutively. Some advice to grow your Twitch career is, or to grow your any sort of media you want to do is either stream or put content out on a schedule. Network. Go out constantly. Make friends. Get to know people, and if people are okay with it, and you're a streamer, and they're okay with allowing you to promote yourself. Some people aren't. Some people aren't cool with self promoting, and I absolutely understand that. Always check with whoever whoever's content you're consuming before you promote yourself. That's the biggest thing I stress. I absolutely hate when I see someone who promotes themselves in someone else's stream and the person clearly has it in their rules, the rules for their channel or in their channel description. Don't self promote. Don't go out of your way to promote your content because you think your content is good. Network, make new friends. Definitely take advantage of social media because social media currently is on a major uprise. And more importantly, just enjoy what you do. If you're making content soullessly or without passion, you're not really making content. You're just kind of droning on and on in front of a camera or behind a microphone or whatever. You are If you're not enjoying anything you're doing, what's the point of doing it? It's like that old expression, do what you love and the money will come naturally. If your heart's not in content creation, don't if your heart is not in content creation, don't create content. Don't try to chase a trend because all you're going to end up doing is you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to end up giving yourself undue stress and mental issues. And in the long road, it's not going to be best. It's going to be a detriment to your health, if anything. Don't create content if you're purely trying to chase a bag. There are better ways to chase a bag. There are better ways to make money. I mean, hell, I take me for example. I'm not making really any money off of this. I'm not making any money off this. I'm doing this because I'm happy. Because I want to. Because I have a constant drive to create content for others to enjoy. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I love making other people happy. So it seemed like a natural fit that I would want, I would want to make content that other people would consume. Help them through like a bad day or a bad time or something like that. I that's the kind of thing I wanted. That's the kind of thing I've wanted to do for a while. But I feel like there was a lot in my life that was holding me back. Now that I'm not being held back by really anything, and I've had nothing but the utmost supportive family members, and a lot of the basement boys supported me in times of self doubt. Now that my main advice to anyone wanting to stream would be this: don't expect to be the next big hit overnight. It's not going to happen without already having an established following. Now, if you have something to the effect of like 8K followers on Twitter, and you decide, oh, I'm gonna live stream my comedic genius, by all means, go right ahead. You are doing far better at. You might have an outstanding start to your streams. But if you've had to start from nothing and work your way up, and you're just expecting, oh, my streams I'm doing what X person is doing, and you're expecting it to kind of rocket to the moon, it's not going to happen. Don't expect to be an overnight sensation if you become a streamer. Like I keep saying, just stream or create content because you love it, not because not because it's trying to chase. It's not because you're trying to get money, not because you're trying to get famous. Do it because you love it. Create the type of content that you would want to see. And at the end of the day, if someone likes your content, hey, that's a solid. If not, you can take pride in knowing that you did your. If not, well, guess what? You take pride in knowing that you did your best, and you shrug it off. And if it's something you really want to keep doing, you keep making that content. All right, but I do want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen to the In the Basement podcast with your wonderful host, PsychoTex Games. As always, you can find my social media links. I will provide them in the description of the video. We have a Discord server. Of course, obviously, if you found this podcast, you're listening to it on YouTube. Dropping a subscribe would be very much appreciated. Even liking the video would be absolutely generous. Telling your friends about me would be just the absolute cherry on top of this Sunday of incredible generosity. And I will try to get these out at a regular interval. I want to shoot for either once a week or once every 2 weeks. Let me down in the comments below. Let me know down in the comments below if you found anything uncouth about my. If there were things you didn't like about my podcast, what I could do better. I'm always open to creative, criticisms. And I will see you guys in the next episode where we will discuss. You know what? I won't tell you what we'll discuss in the next episode. You'll have to find out. You'll have to tune in to find out for yourself. Other than that, I will see you guys later. And have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whatever time zone you're in. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and wear your mask.